Hello friends, it's time for my March wrap up. I have a basket full of goodies. It's a little overflowing and I just feel like we have the whole rainbow present here except for red, which is why I'm wearing my obnoxious red sweater. Last time I asked you for ideas of how to organize my wrap ups. You gave me lots of ideas to take forward. Am I a little crooked? One of the ideas was from Rachel and she said to organize my wrap up by my least to favorite. Why are words so hard today? My least favorite to favorite title. I'm gonna do it the opposite way. My favorite to least favorite, because last time we started negatively and I want to start positively. Okay, my turtleneck is trying to strangle me. Let's see if it'll stay still. Okay, favorite title. When I think of favorite title, I think of something that like helps imply something in the story, means something regarding the story, not just something that sounds nice. So let me actually organize this into 3 sections. Good titles, okay titles, bad titles. That one. Oh, my battery's about to die. How does that happen to me? Okay, I'm ready this time. I think my favorite title of something I read this month is Sorrowland by River Solomon, which also is one of my favorite books of the month. I give it 5 stars. A lot of times tacking land on the end of a sentence makes it implied that it's a fun place to be. You know, Disneyland, Candyland, Legoland. So there was something about the title itself that was a draw, even without knowing what the book was about, because it's like this dark take on the idea. There is a cult commune community in this book, the Blessed Acres of Cain, also known as Cainland, which our main character escapes from at the beginning of the book. She's pregnant and she's realizing that the situation she is in is not good for her and she needs to survive elsewhere, and is willing to just go into the wilderness with her newborn babies, be independent, just figure stuff out. She ends up being hunted throughout the book, and she comes into contact with other people. She like makes relationships once she leaves the forest and introduces these young children to like America. So this little family is in such unfamiliar territory. I don't know what genre to put this in. It's like reality, but it's fantastical, it's horror, it's gothic. There's a lot of disturbing scenes and moments and descriptions, some like body horror. Our main character starts to develop these like growths on her body. She's experiencing hauntings. She has like this strength that comes out of nowhere, like physical abilities. She meets this other character and their relationship becomes a big part of the story. I tabbed a part I really enjoyed where they're talking about identity and, you know, finding yourself, but also like this inherent desire or pressure from the outside world to label yourself. And she says she doesn't want to put a label on like the way she identifies, like gender and sexuality wise. She says without a name for it, it's just something I am, a part of life. Once it's got a name, I know that means someone has studied it, dissected it, pulled it apart. When something has a name, they can say it's bad. And she didn't want to hear anybody else's thoughts on what was bad anymore. And I just think that was a really great moment. So there are themes of like belonging and trauma and exploitation. There's a lot about parenthood, but it doesn't overtake the story, which I appreciate. I think my favorite aspect of this is there's some subtle kind of like nods to the reader, like some little sarcastic remarks that are very tongue-in-cheek, breaking the fourth wall about like the state of the world while we're in this really dark, strange, bleak situation. There are these moments that are just really fun to read. And whether Sorrowland is like a direct reference to Cainland and the experience there, or just the idea that we're all existing here, I just really like the title. And I liked the book. Let's continue on with the bleakness, shall we? This title is A Cruelty Special to Our Species. And I don't think that actually needs the poetry collection to explain itself. Like, that you get it. This is written by Emily Jungmin Yoon, and it is about comfort women. It is testimonies directly from comfort women in Korea, and also Emily's thoughts and experiences as a Korean woman. Her goal with this is to increase awareness and encourage like historical consciousness, especially outside of Korea, of the sexual violence against women, both in the past and like current day. I read this too fast. I'll say that just generally. I think this type of collection deserves you really confronting and taking in every single poem. I don't think I took enough time to fully like understand what she was saying. Most of them were really not easy to read because they're difficult situations. I initially gave this a 4-star, but I don't think I should really rate poetry in general. But a couple of the poems lost me, like with the intent, just with the style of language. It's obviously really devastating to read these personal accounts, and the perspectives, the light being shed on it, it's obviously also important. So yeah, that's what it's about. I think this title just hurts. Like it, yeah. Do we have anywhere uplifting to go from here? I don't think so. Next up is Death in Her Hands by Ottessa Moshfegh. And this title is just great. This book is also great. 5 stars. I had vaguely heard of this before. I'm reading it as part of a series on someone's channel. Look out for me to link to that soon. It wasn't something that particularly interested me. I've said actually recently that I don't love following older, like senior main characters, and that doesn't mean that I don't end up liking the books in the end. It's just not something that I typically like want to pick up or think is going to be an interesting topic. Because I didn't know that much about it going in, I didn't realize how low of an average rating this had. People feel very strongly about this on both sides of the star rating scale, and I think that a lot of people, because the way that this book is pitched, go into it in a certain way. From what I understand, this sounds like it's going to be a thriller, but it's definitely not. It's just like internal monologue for 300 pages, which is, if you know me, that's like my favorite thing. It's an old woman in the forest who finds a note that says, Magda is dead, here lies her body, I didn't kill her, but there is no body. And so this woman just like spirals into trying to solve a mystery, but there is no mystery because there is no dead person, there's no clues, there's no evidence. And the point of the story isn't to solve the crime or find out anything. It's about this woman taking this situation into her own hands and obsessing over it and creating all of these ideas of who Magda could be, what she went through, all of the different people she might have encountered in her life, and how she ended up dead. It's one of the coolest things I've ever read because I interpret it as just a big metaphor for novel writing and how it feels to write a story and just become so intensely involved in a fictional story that you have created. It's about loneliness, and it's about isolation and obsession, and the world kind of starts to reflect the story that she is writing in her own mind, because that's the reality that she's created for herself. It's got an unreliable narrator in a certain sense, but not in a gotcha type of way that you might expect. It's just like you are just living in Vesta's little world. And it's super weird, and I love it. I love it so much. Next up, a title I love is The Weight of Our Sky by Hannah Alcaff. And this one directly references the title within the book. And I kind of talked about it, or I did talk about it, like very explicitly in the vlog that I read this. But it's also like powerful to discover that for yourself, so I don't want to spoil it here, so it is in there. But this takes place in Kuala Lumpur in 1969, where there are racial tensions between Chinese and Malay, and it gives like this historical context if this is a situation like me that you didn't know a ton about, but also in like a fictionalized family that gives you like an action-packed narrative to be following. I also enjoyed this. My favorite titles are all my highest rated books of the month. I just realized. This I gave 4.5 stars. We're following Melody, who's a character with OCD, and she believes that she has a jinn who, you know, is controlling what she does, is influencing the thoughts that she's having, the violent visions and repetitive tasks that she's being forced to complete. And the book kicks off with riots and violence in the streets. Communication is cut off. She's separated from her family, and she spends the book trying to give back to her mother, trying to find her friend, trying to help people in the streets. She ends up in this family's home who doesn't necessarily want her there, and her and the son are working together to like track down who they need to and survive this experience. And I just thought it was really wonderful. The pace is perfection. The balance of like bleak with hope is really well done. I am so excited that I like this because I have an arc from this author that I'm going to be reading soon, and I'm even more hyped to read it now. Another title I'm into that's a little vague, but I feel like you could take a lot of things away from it, is The Darkness Outside Us by Elliot Schreifer, which is a story of two boys in space. They, due to their age, aren't affected by like radiation is what they're told. So they're on a mission to find another like astronaut who was supposed to go to Jupiter's moon, something like that. A lot of things that these books have in common that I love is a very isolated setting, survival, limited cast of characters. What's happening with these boys though is they're on different sides of the ship. They don't know each other. They're supposedly enemies, but they have a common goal, and they wake up with no memory of how they got on this ship, what they're even supposed to do. So they have to figure out a lot of things together. The ship teaches them a lot of things, and as the story goes on, as do many YA sci-fi novels, they discover that things are not as they seem, and their mission kind of changes, and what they have to figure out throughout the story, and what their goal really is. So it's like the darkness outside us, like when you look out the window and it's dark, but also like the darkness that exists like outside us. Shut up, Kayla. Next I have Unberry Carol. I quite like this title because it's about a woman who frequently has comas, like there's something not right with her, and she falls into these like paralysis like sleeps where she can hear everything that's going on around her, but she can't move, she can't see. They're temporary, only a few people know about them, and she's kind of deciding at the beginning of the book if she should tell more people and if she should be more vulnerable with the people in her life. But then she falls into one of these comas, and her husband is like, this is my moment to kill this bitch. He wants her money, he wants to do away with her, so he goes and tells people that she's like actually dead. But then there's a man in another city who gets wind of Carol's like actual death, and he's like, wait a minute, I don't think she's actually dead. So he's coming to town and he wants to save her. So it's like a damsel in distress, horror, Western, supernatural fairy tale. A lot of it does not make sense. It's kind of stupid, but I gave it 4.5 stars because of course I did. I just thought it was really weird. I like when things aren't explained. There are all of these characters who are so fascinating. There's like personified rot, and there's a character named Smoke. The audiobook is fantastic and made me very uncomfortable multiple times. I love a book with a countdown. This definitely delivered that. There's like a showdown. There's traveling down a trail. There's a little map in here that makes it fun. It's mostly from like outside perspectives. Carol doesn't really feel like a main character. It's all of the men mostly around her who have bad intentions, good intentions, and their feelings about Carol. And as the title implies, like her husband's trying to bury her, but everyone else needs to like, including herself, needs to unbury Carol. Okay, moving on to my stack of titles that I think are like fine. Like they describe the book, so I can't be mad at them. This one is The Boy Who Met a Whale, and it's about a boy who met a whale. No, it's about 3 characters. We have a sister and brother, and then we have a kid who escaped like a bad ship in the sea, and he washed up ashore, and there are 2 men who are chasing after him, and these 3 need to like work together. They lose each other, they find each other. It's written by Nisrana Farouk, who's a Sri Lankan author, and I thought it was fun, action-packed. I only gave it 3 stars, and that's probably not fair of me to give a middle grade, but there's like this treasure that they're trying to find or get back. It's a lot of repetitive scenes. There's some cute stuff with sea turtles. They meet a whale, so like the title's fine. This is the most on the nose of all the titles. The Paris Apartment, like could we get more blatant? I guess her other book was like The Guest List, which is about all the characters who are on a guest list to a wedding. She's also got The Hunting Party, which is about a hunting party of individuals. And I can't be mad about this because there are so many thriller titles I've talked about recently that make no sense, or they take like the tiniest amount of the plot and they make that the title, and it's wrong. So this one very much does exist in the Paris apartment. Well, a Paris apartment. We're following a woman who's running away, going to stay in her brother's Paris apartment with him. She's arriving kind of unannounced. But when she gets there, he's not there. And there's this whole cast of characters. We get all of their perspectives who live in this apartment building, and they have experiences with Ben, her brother. They've seen him around, they know of him, some of them might know where he is. And yeah, we just go the whole book finding out about their different interactions with each other, the things that they see and hear in the hallways, all the secrets that they're keeping. There's some decent reveals in here, but generally it was just okay. I gave it a 2.5 star. I haven't loved a Literally Dead Book Club selection for 2022 yet, so here's hoping that that turns around soon. Another title that's fine for me is A World Without You by Beth Revis. This is about a boy, and at the beginning of the book, his friend has taken her own life, so it's about living in a world without her. But this also like could be applied to a lot of different elements to the story. But you know, it doesn't feel like a super referential, like impactful title. That's how I feel. He believes though that he's responsible. He thinks that he has the ability to like time travel, and he left her in another time. So he is staying at what he believes is a school for like kids with special powers. So throughout the book we get to see him existing in these different realities he's created, but the overall tone is that, you know, he's going through something really tough. Everyone around him wants the best for him and his mental health, and he needs to come to understand what's really happening. And the thing about existing in this other world is that he gets to be with her. He gets to see her again. So he can't necessarily, and doesn't want to necessarily come to grips with reality. Overall, I gave this a 3 just because it's a story that I have read before, and I feel like I've gotten as much as I can out of this type of story, but I also don't super feel comfortable rating it, and probably shouldn't have just said my rating, because at a different time and for other people I understand that that should have an objectively higher rating. But you'll tell me that my rating is fine, so that's fine. Next up is Other Words for Smoke by Sarah Maria Griffin. And like, I like the title, Other Words for Smoke, and it does imply certain things, but just like, this is a kind of traditional title, Other Words for Blank. I feel like I've seen it a million times, and I wanted to have a more exciting title, a more exciting cover, because I feel like this should have more hype. This was 5 stars for me. It's odd and unique, and yet I want to compare it to things. Like, if you like The Raven Cycle, or if you like I'll Give You the Sun, but you want some weirdness like The Raven Cycle, or you read like The Last House on Needless Street and you liked the odd, you know, talking cat and strange house vibes, but you want it to actually be like haunted house strangeness, this is it. It's really hard to pin down like a genre for this or try to describe it, but there are a couple characters and they're living in this house, and there's like evil that wants to feed on the people in the house. So there's like certain sacrifices that need to happen. It's like a mix of reality and fantasy. It's just very strange. Half of it is written in second person, which just feels uncomfortable. It's about manipulative relationships and abuse, but it's all like tied to this like creature in the house. There's this really slowly revealed history. There are queer relationships. There are a lot of metaphors. A lot of things don't make sense. It doesn't feel very grounded. Like, the writing is very, I don't know. It's just like smoky. Like, you can't really grasp what is going on, and it's great. If you like weird types of books that I typically like, this is YA, but I feel like it can transcend age range. Loved it. Another one is The Resting Place by Camilla Steen, and it was translated to English by Alexandra Fleming. I feel like the title is fine, because like, I think I generally understand what it means, but it's also not the most impactful or interesting. This is about a woman who has face blindness, and she witnessed the murder of her grandmother, but she can't she doesn't know who the killer is, and that's something that kind of haunts her, and she has a lot of paranoia. So she's going to stay in her grandmother's old manor. She left it to her as an inheritance. I love inheritance stories. I love spooky house stories. I wanted this to get a little spookier. I gave it 3 stars, but it definitely fits within the genre that it says. Like, it's more of a suspense novel. It's a slow revealing of truths kind of story. So she goes to stay in this house just to like figure out, you know, the paperwork. There's a lawyer with her. She has her aunt with her, her boyfriend, and slowly things just start to seem weird, and only she's really recognizing it. And then we're also getting this timeline from like 50 years ago of this girl living in the house as like an employee and her experience with the house. I feel like this is one of those rare books that has a good like reveal or twist. And even though I was surprised by it, I didn't rate the book very highly, but I thought the atmosphere was great. The characters didn't do much for me. Now onto titles that I don't like, and not because they're like bad, I just feel like they could have had better titles. So this is My Not So Perfect Life by Sophie Kinsella. That's not it. Starting this book, I thought it was going to be about this girl who like, you know, creates an online presence, and it's kind of pitched that way, that is like her own perfect reality, but it's about learning that everybody has flaws. That's like not what the story's about. Like, sure, she doesn't have a perfect life, but like that's a boring title. It's about this woman who gets fired from her job, and she doesn't really know what to do with her life. She doesn't have a lot of opportunities. She's like applying for jobs, but in the meantime she goes and stays with her dad and her stepmom, and they're opening up like a vacation style ranch, and she's helping them out with that and just hanging out. And coming to stay at the ranch is 2 people who fired her essentially. One of them she wants revenge on because she hates her, and one she had like a little romantic moment with him right before she got fired. And it's just about her coming to terms with like what she wants in life, being truthful with her parents about her situation, because she is lying to some people, but not overtly lying as much as like I thought it would be. I thought this book would be harder to read because there are certain themes that come along with like being less than truthful with your family and like making up stuff for people to believe all your life, and then like when it all gets revealed, oh my god. But it wasn't that type of story. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was a nice story about finding your passion, and she also gets to find out the truth about, you know, certain things regarding her job and the people she works with, and it was good. It is weird that some of my least favorite books are also my least favorite titles. This one was 3 stars. Okay, it's not that bad. This Is All Your Fault by Amina Maisafi. Like, I think the title's fine, but it doesn't really do much. In this, we're following 3 different perspectives, 3 women who work at a bookstore and have to save the bookstore from closing. That's their goal. They find out at the beginning some things are going on that means the bookstore will be shutting down soon. They want to save it. They want to save their jobs. They love this place, and most of the book is them just like finding out the truth about why the bookstore is closing, and also just like having crushes on various employees and customers, and just like interacting with people and talking about, you know, their day-to-day like life interests and stuff. So it's just okay. I don't have anything more to say about it. I did talk about it more in a vlog, but I've forgotten like every single plot point of this by now. 3 stars? Is that too high now? Only Mostly Devastated by Sophie Gonzalez. It's not that I want this to be called like Summer Lovin' or You're the One That I Want or Hopelessly Devoted to You or something that is a direct Grease reference. But where this title comes from is just like one line from a character who like generally has very over the top like ridiculous phrases, and this is one of them. He just goes like, I'm only mostly devastated. So in this, we're following Ollie and Will. They had a summer fling, and Ollie was supposed to go back home, but he's actually living in this new town now, and Will is not out. So when Ollie starts going to the same school, Will has to put on this exterior like he doesn't care about Ollie, that he's too cool, that, you know, all of the expectations that his friends have always had of him are the same. So it's about personal growth and finding yourself. It's a romance. I didn't really like it. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like how they interacted. I don't like them together. I ultimately gave it 2 stars. I think I know people can get a lot out of this, and I'm just not the target demographic. Though I feel like I am. Like, this is a 30-year-old woman writing about high school, and it feels like it's set in the time that I was in high school based on like the references and the interests of the characters and the way that they speak. But you know, besides just seeing the fun references of which character's which and how you can connect it to the movie, it didn't do much for me. And then my least favorite title is actually not my least favorite title as a concept, but as it relates to the book, it is. And it's The Centaur's Wife. Because when you pick up a book called The Centaur's Wife, you expect it to be about a centaur's wife, and it's not. This is a story of a woman named Heather, her husband, and their children, and the community that she becomes a part of because the apocalypse has arrived. And, you know, they're cut off from society, and they think that the world is ending, but they don't like totally know what's going on because they don't have any like TV or radio or any contact with the outside world. So it's a very insular story. I gave this 2 stars. I guess let's just get that out of the way right now. I don't know what the purpose of a lot of it was. I think there are some great things that this story has to say, but the hundreds of pages of just like this community and their constant like bickering and just dissatisfaction with their life was a lot to read. And I feel like I've read this setting with like a similar tone, but just done in a more compelling way. We also get glimpses of this community of centaurs who live on this mountain, who Heather was brought to as a child by her father, who was trying to fix her. And a lot of the story is about like her not needing to be fixed, and her having cerebral palsy and having damage to her legs isn't something that needed to be healed. I think that's so fantastic, and the integration of different fairy tales in it was like a fun idea, but there wasn't a lot for me to take away from it that I really understood past like a couple messages that I strongly agree with. The whole centaur situation, the way that reality and magic were coexisting and came to interact in the story was confusing and odd. And it just didn't follow the characters that I thought we were going to follow, the storylines that I thought were going to happen. I really appreciate that a book like this exists, and I know that it's going to do something for someone. It just completely lost me. I think my 2-star, now that I'm talking about it, sounds more like a 1-star. But we'll just end it there. That's everything. How many? 15 books that I read in March. Let me know anything that you thought about any of the books I talked about, if you've read them, if you're going to, if you're never going to now. I love getting to chat with you in the comments, and I will see you down there. Bye.